Hey guys, so today we are doing something entirely different. I'm not playing a game. It's actually mostly of acting and reading, and I'm very good at acting. So, we're going to be playing this thing called, Galatia something. So, I just finished reading Beautiful Mistake. So now we're going to go, we have to wait for a few episodes, but we're going to go ahead and try this one out. Okay, summary. So just before you guys make any conclusions, this isn't real. I'm just acting. I'm just reading what it says. So being mindful that there are some curse words in here, and because it's mostly about love stories, there's going to be a lot of rated R sections about sex and all that stuff. And there is a lot of cursing. So I'm going to have to really get into the acting when it comes to this kind of thing. So be prepared for that. Okay, summary. After butting journalist Kate Dawson insults the wealthiest CEO in the city, he puts a target on her back. When she catches him in a deprived act, punishing her becomes his mission. In his game of domination, will Kate learn to love or submitting? Okay. I was going to die any second now. This steel box of death would be my tomb. I knew it. I couldn't take it. Finally, the elevator doors opened, and I stumbled out pale and hyperventilating. My hand pressed against a granite wall, trying to center myself. My face dripping with sweat. My cheeks flushed. My mascara running down my cheeks. Get it together, Dawson. I tried to breathe like I'd been taught in the meditation classes. Easier said than done. When you're claustrophobic, you never know what cramped setting will set you off. I cursed inwardly, knowing that I probably looked like a mess. The workers passing by were all staring. The office of Price Industries was one of the tallest buildings in the city. How bad I'd forgotten to take that into account. As a reporter, you have one job. Do your research. I could have done better. Especially given that I was about to meet with one of the most powerful men in the Western world. The CEO of Price Industries, Taylor Prince. Finally, catching my breath, I headed for the nearest bathroom and considered my reflection. Damn! My makeup was smudged all over, and just my luck. Today, out of all the days, I had forgotten to pack my emergency kit. At least I still look good and natural. I hastily turned on the faucet, washed the horror mask off, and wiped my face off with a paper towel. I checked myself out in the mirror. There I was, the girl with the amber eyes, dimples, and a shock of red hair that seemed to always catch people's attention. I gathered myself as I walked out to the reception area. An interview with a man like Taylor Prince was a big deal, career-making or breaking kind of big deal, and I needed to look the part if I wanted to pull this off. I found the blonde, petite, doll-faced girl in her early 20s sitting behind a desk and cleared my throat. I'm Kate Dawson from the Daily House, and I have an appointment with Mr. Price. Oh, and of course, the receptionist said, frowning slightly. Evidently, I was not what she had expected. Damn it! Was the lack of makeup that distracting, or were my cheeks still flushed from the nightmare elevator experience? Don't overthink it, I told myself. Stay focused. Finally, after a quick and quiet call, the receptionist stood up. Mr. Price has been expecting you. Please, come this way. She led me through a large minimalist hallway that reeked of power. At the end was a large mahogany door, and a door I already recognized, because this was not my first scheduled appointment with the infamous Mr. Price. No, the first time around he had set me on my way claiming to be too busy for an interview. Please have a seat, Miss Dawson. I will inform Mr. Price that you are here. I merely nodded in alignment, feeling that my phone buzzed just as she sat down. About to go in? Yep, wish me luck. Just be yourself. You're a great reporter and everyone knows it. Tell that to Arthur. He's not going to fire you, Kate. He's just trying to apply pressure. Here's hoping you're right. I thank the gods or whatever was up there for Rick. I'd be going crazy right now without his support. Although the crush I'd harbored on my married colleague often made me crazy in other days. After Taylor Prince had rescheduled our first interview, my chief editor, Arthur, had not been pleased. He had even threatened to fire me if another publishing house got the exclusive before we did. Nobody had ever had the chance to interview Taylor Prince face to face. It was as if the man didn't even exist. Either that, or he simply didn't want to make his life public property. So this was once in a lifetime opportunity, one that I could not afford to mess up. My nana was very ill between the hospital bills and monthly check for the home nurse, and I was barely making ends meet as it was. Ever since my parents had passed away when I was 12, it had always just been the two of us, Nana and me. Now, even at the thought of losing my grandmother, I found myself tearing up. Stop it, I ordered myself. Eyes clear, head in the game. You got this. I watched as the secretary knocked on the mahogany door and entered the room. My palms suddenly felt sweaty. I had just caught a glimpse of Mr. Prince's shoes before the door had closed. They were pitch black and almost looked like they were sparkling. Okay, sparkling was probably an exaggeration, but they were still no doubt a ridiculously expensive pair of black Italian leather shoes. It's not just for a CEO, but for a king. Of course, sir, I heard right before the receptionist emerged from his office. Mr. Price will be right with you. I blew out a small breath of relief, and the first time around I had been turned away at first sight, so this was promising. Thank you, I said, nodding. I quickly opened my bag to double-check that I had my tape recorder, my list of questions, and most importantly, my pen. That's when I heard the door open, and I knew I was about to see him, the man himself, Taylor Prince. I stood up, a smile spreading across my face. Mr. Price, Oh. But it wasn't Taylor Prince. Nah, it was another woman emerged from his office instead. I swallowed down the rest of my words. Feeling inexplicably self-conscious, I tugged lightly at my black high-waisted skirt. The woman in front of me was beautiful. Too beautiful to be working here. Tall. So freaking tall. Is this a corporation or a modeling agency? Miss Dawson, I presumed? A French accent, I was sure of it. Yes, I nodded, but I was expecting Mr. Price. Yes, I'm Christine, Mr. Price's PA. I'm sorry, but Miss Dawson, Mr. Price will have to reschedule again. What? I blustered dissembling. But why? Unfortunately, he has another meeting scheduled. I felt a righteous rage building inside of me. My hands coiled into fists, non-stone flaring. Are you serious? This is the second time he's done this. I could lose everything because... Why? This man on the other side of the door couldn't even spare 5 minutes for one measly interview? I'm afraid there's nothing more that I can do except for suggesting a different day, Miss Dawson. Christine wasn't being cold or cruel. In fact, she even looked a little sympathetic. But that didn't stop me from wanting to grab this model PA whatever by her a sick thought occurred to me. Maybe all Taylor Prince was busy with was Christine. I'm sure it was hard to concentrate with a beauty like that in your office, scrolling around in her skin-tight pencil skirt. Too horny to give an interview, was it? Was that it? You don't understand. You don't understand, I fumed. There won't be a different day. This is my career, and he's playing around with? If I go back with the same story, my boss will fire me. I'm really sorry, Miss Dawson. This is ridiculous. The man is right there. Damn it! I was going to lose my job. And what about Nana? Please, Miss Dawson. Christine shook her head. Mr. Price does not take kindly to office scenes. Then please, tell him that I am begging him. 2 questions. 1, anything, please. If groveling on the floor would seal the deal with them, baby, I was prepared to grovel. I'm afraid not, Miss Dawson. Please take the reschedule appointment or leave. I don't want to have to call security. Of course. I threw her a sarcastic smile and hooked my bag over my arm. I'll leave, but please pass Mr. Prince's message for me and tell him to stick to his rescheduled appointment up his right ass. boss. And please, don't forget to give him a big thank you for getting me fired. I added, fucking dick! I almost spat the last word out. Then I turned and stormed out of the office, throwing open the door to the staircase, forgetting that I took the elevator, forgetting that I'd have to hike down 37 floors, forgetting everything. All I could see was red, and I had just called the most powerful man in the world a dick. Arthur was going to fire me. I'm done for. Taylor. She said, what? I sat behind my big antique desk, brow knitted together into a thin line, jaw clenched. I couldn't believe my ears. There was no one in the world who would have the audacity to say what Christine had just repeated to me. Christine stood before my desk with the trace of an amused smile on her lips. A fucking dick? Her words, Taylor, not mine. No one apart from maybe my father had spoken to me like that. At least not to my face. My talent was limited, and my name far too Rapunzel to allow anyone to tarnish it. Here I was almost feeling sorry for having sent Miss Dawson away again, and this is how she repays me? It wasn't my fault that business had gotten in the way. It's not every day the opportunity to take over Jamison Enterprises occurs, and I had just managed to scratch it from under Grayson's a ruthless act? Maybe. There would have been hell to pay, but everybody who ever dared to come up against me knew better. No matter the circumstances, Taylor Price always won. A lesson I intended to teach this so-called Mr. Dawson. She would have to learn not to go around labeling people, especially powerful businessmen such as myself. I know that look, Taylor, Christine said. Leave that poor girl alone. You're encouraging this? You think I should just let it slide? No. I think that you should make it up to her. What? That little girl needs to be punished, and not in the fun way. Christine blushed, sending me a disapproving glare. That was behind closed doors, Taylor. Oh, but you enjoyed playing master and slave. Don't pretend otherwise. Her green cat-like eyes lingered on me, presumably picturing the rippling muscles under my tailored suit. Then she frowned, looking away. Desperate to brief reminder of our past escapees, I could tell that we were still both thinking about Miss Dawson, and I shook my head. You know how I feel about her, Ernest, I said. And this woman, if she's brazen enough to... a dick... Yes, that. I wasn't sure if Christine was calling me one, too. She cannot be allowed to get away with it. Then don't allow it. I frowned. What was Christine suggesting? She slowly stepped in around my desk, bent over, and readjusted my tie, giving me a view to dive for down her shirt. You could teach Miss Dawson a lesson and give her the interview at the same time. Have you considered that, Taylor? And now my eyes lit up, and a smile spread across my face. Yes, Christine, I understand you perfectly. Where are you? With my Nana. She says hi, by the way. And it says you should come by for dinner sometime again soon. I'd love that. But, Kate, you need to get to the office right now. What is it? It's serious. I felt a wave of dread surge through me. I have devoted my life to my job at the expenses of everything else. My only friend and family was Nana, and she depended on my job even more than I did. Now, thanks to a big rich boy with a bigger ego, everything I'd worked so hard for was at risk. I'm gonna get fired. Well, I guess we gotta wait for that episode to come out. So now let's read, let's read this one. Okay. When Lydia discovers on her 18th birthday that she is destined to marry King Gabriel of Emarnia, her whole life is turned upside down. Using her unique fixed powers and years of training, Lydia tries to reset fate at every turn. But King Gabriel has other plans. When Lydia discovers on her... Oh, come on. You are hereby summoned to the Singing Mountain by the Watchers of the Fate. Make haste and tell no one of this letter. The future of all Ignolia depends upon it. We await your arrival. Serenia. I can't say these words right. No mortal man had ever stepped foot within the ancient cave and lived to tell the tale. Luckily for Lucius, he was no mere mortal. The old wizard descended deeper into the darkness, trailing his gloved fingers along the rocky walls, examining the charcoal drawings depicting his world's history. Imaginary of kings and queens, mages, and werewolves. He recognized one of the figures and he thought that a little black heroic smudge facing what appeared to be a dragon. Lucius bit back a snort, pulling out his flask and taking a long, hearty gulp. It had been many years since Lucius was that wizard. He was only here now because of the Watchers of Fate had demanded his presence. The 3 powerful witch sisters were not to be trifled with. No one had come to this mountain in centuries. And the reason for this letter, this invitation, it puzzled Lucius. He hadn't been performing magic for decades. What could they possibly want with an old drunk like him? The dark pathway twisted and turned until at last, Lucius saw it, an opening into a large cavern, illuminated by strange glowing orange stalactites above. It was a throne room. Lucius realized, sitting upon the identical marble thrones were 3 identical women, scarred sisters. Seeing the witches, the Watchers of Fate, Lucius welcomed. The one in the middle, who he guessed was Serena, slowly stood up, and she had silky white hair that reached her knees, and her skin was the color of dark honey, and her lips an even darker shade. Her silver robes hugged her slender, ethereal frame. Although she was identical to her sisters, there was an authority to her tone that told Lucius that she was in charge. "It has been a long time since we have seen you," Serena said. They had never met, of course, but the Watchers of the Fate could see anyone anywhere in the kingdom, in the present, past, or the future. Lucius smiled with a grimace. "I have been busy." He noticed then why he was squinting. The witch on the right was holding a bright white orb full of incandescent energy. It was the only source of light in the cave, and it was magnificent and terrifying at once, as if even the slightest movement might cause it to explode. Serena continued. "My sisters and I have something urgent to share with you. If it is a quest, Lucius said, shaking his head, you know that there are other younger magicians better suited." "This order does not come from us, Lucius," Serena cut him off, "but from the gods." At this, Lucius went deathly quiet. The will of the gods was never to be questioned. Still, Lucius didn't like the sound of it. The last time the gods interfered in moral affairs, a century-long war had been the result. A war in which Lucius had lost too much. "What could the gods possibly want from me?" he asked. Serena turned to her sister, holding the orb, and nodded. All at once, the witches closed their eyes, hummed in unison, and the orb rose in midair. Lucius felt the higher in his arms stand at the end. Never in his life had he felt a magic as powerful as this. The orb began to shake wildly mid-air, growing brighter and brighter, as if it was about to detonate. Lucius held up a hand to shield his eyes. Finally, the orb floated to rest on a stone altar, and with a deafening crack, split open, leaving only a white melting substance. "Behold, Lucius," Serenia whispered, "your quest." Within the milky substance oozing off the altar, there was a small pink shape, and now a strange sound echoed off the walls of the ancient cave. The sound of a baby's cry. There, lying on the hard surface, born from the orb itself, was an infant. Lucius couldn't believe his eyes as he took a shaky step toward it. "Why?" he stuttered. "Who?" "She is no ordinary child, Lucius," Serenia said. "She is a Sylpher." That was the last word Lucius ever expected to hear. A Sylpher? They were mere myth. He thought that wizards who could control one of the 4 elements of nature, the elemental power, was something only gods could do. "What do you expect me to do with her?" he asked. The last time he'd seen a child, it had ended with heartbreak. Hearing the sound of this one cry, seeing her innocent little body, it unsettled him to his core. Hold her, Lucius, Sabrina demanded. He reluctantly picked the child up and looked down at her. You will guard her, nurture her for 18 years until that fateful day when her destiny will become intertwined with the king's. So that was why she was so important. Lucius shook his head, and he couldn't possibly raise a child. What were these witches and the gods thinking? I know this must be hard for you, Servinia said knowingly, but you must do it, Lucius, for Anilia, for your people. Lucius looked once more at the child, and he promised himself then and there he would do as the gods demanded, but he would not grow attached. She would be his apprentice and nothing more. He would call her Lydia, for it seemed a wholly unremarkable name, and for a child of destiny such as this, the appearance of normality would be most important. Do you see what she is, Lucius? Serena asked, her true power? The baby gazed up at him with big, innocent eyes. They were the color of flames, a mixture of gold, red, and orange. The fiery shades swirled and danced almost like real flames glowing unnaturally. Fire, Lucius whispered. She will burn the world if I'm not careful. That's right, Serena said, nodding solemnly. You hold the destiny of our world, Lucius, the daughter of flames. 18 years later. Lydia. Focus your senses, Lydia. Aim with precision. Although she could hear a man's distant voice, Lydia only saw darkness, emptiness, and in the void a long, thin wooden post began to take shape. Her target. You mustn't be stiff. The magic will only bind if you are at ease. She curled her fingers into a fist, trying to drown out his drunken advice. His slurs were only making her angrier. But then, maybe that would help. Already Lydia could feel the hot steam slithering between her fingers. A pop and a sizzling sound followed. Lydia didn't need to open her eyes to recognize the orange fire enveloping her entire fist. It was working. She could do this. Do not waver! Unleash your power, Lydia! Now! Damn it, old man! She wasn't wavering until he had come to mention it. Now as she flung the fireball through the air, she snapped open her eyes and the ball of flames flew just past the wooden post, cindering the wood, but hardly burning it. The fire blew out mid-air with a defiled fizzle. Enraged, Lydia turned to chastise her guardian, but he wasn't even paying attention. Lying on the grease beneath a tree was the once great magician Lucius Voltaire, Lydia's guardian and only family. Lucius was guzzling what was left of a cheap bottle of elven rum and craned back, oblivious. Seriously? She asked, crossing her arms with a glare. At this, he turned to consider her blurred eye. You're not practicing enough, kid. What can I say? Lydia hated when he called her a kid, and it was so condescending. Maybe if you actually train me instead of drinking all the time. Excuses, he said, waving his hand and taking another gulp. Well, Grandpa! His jade-colored eyes flashed with sudden sober intensity. I told you not to call me that. Lydia smiled. This was the one way she knew how to get a rise out of him. What's the matter? You're 918 years old anyway. The truth was, even though he'd raised her, he'd always instructed Lydia to call him Lucius. Why? He would never say. But every year around October, on Lydia's birthday to be exact, he'd get a lot drunker than usual, like today. Lydia's 18th birthday. Well, if you'd asked me, you did great, Lydia. Lydia looked down to see Lux crawling around her foot. He was a black cat with piercing yellow eyes and a sociable side. After all, the feline could talk. Thanks, Lux, Lydia said with a sigh. But you ought to think that fish goes perfectly well with cake. He jumped into Lydia's arms and nuzzled against her at the scratch behind his ears. Lux had been her best friend since she was 5 years old. She found him in the back alley behind a potion merchant's shop. Lydia assumed Lux must have had a sip of something magical to give him the power of speech, but she'd never asked him. So what are we doing? So what are we doing for your birthday? He purred affectionately. Good question, Lux, Lydia said, turning to Luxus. Any ideas, Grandpa? But she was surprised by the tormented expression on the old wizard's face. It looked like he was hiding something deeply and profoundly painful. Go and get ready for school, he muttered. And then he got up and left Lydia and her cat alone in the backyard, and she petted Lux's head. Oh, that's all right, Lux. We'll come up with something. You're 18, it's a big deal. Lydia nodded. Perhaps, but why was it such a big deal to Lucius? Their house was on top of a hill in a town called Vera, and on the outskirts of Arnian Kingdom, from Lydia's bedroom window, she could see the towers of the faraway palace. The palace where the king, Gabriel James Inarcia, lives and ruled, and the most handsome man in the world, or so they said. The truth was, Lydia knew very little about the king herself, but she'd always been curious, and he was 339 years old. Apparently, but because of his wizard magic, looked no older than 28. And he had never married for some reason, so he knew he was still without a queen. Sometimes Lydia would find sealed letters between the king and Lucius and wondered what they could possibly be corresponding about. Lucius hadn't been practicing magic for years other than to train her how to use her spiteful powers. So what was that about? She got dressed, putting on her hideous school uniform, a dull, long gray pinafore with a white, short-sleeved shirt and an even uglier red and gray bow tie, and tried to add a bit of glamour by throwing on as many bracelets as possible. Even though she had to wear the same outfit as everyone else in the school, everyone knew that she was different. From her olive skin to her hair, streaked with fiery reds and deep blacks, Lydia had always stood out. Her eyes alight with fire. Fire told everyone in town that she was a slipper, whether she wanted them to know or not. At least a mark on her wrist, two intertwined, glowing, so she could hide with sleeves and accessories. Mostly people looked at her strange because of the drunk wizard who happened to be her guardian. Lucius has always made her promise to save her virginity. Why? Honestly, after all these years, Lydia had grown tired of even asking. But she obeyed with the hope, and she might one day understand. When she was finally ready, Lydia ran downstairs with a Lux bounding behind her. Okay, we're ready. Good, Lucius grumbled, holding out a hand. I'm in a hurry, so... Lydia knew the drill. When Lucius didn't feel like traveling on foot, he would teleport them wherever they needed to go, and she took his hand and opened her bag so Lux could jump in. Let's go, she said. With a sudden whirl, the world spun around them, and they were transported. Lydia blinked, adjusting to her new surroundings, and then frowned. Grandpa, she said, confused. Where? I told you not to call me that, he said, stern. He turned to a corner, and Lydia quickly followed, shocked to see the massive gates of the Emernian palace before them. What were they doing here? Maybe it's a surprise. Lux purred from Lydia's bag. For your birthday. Lucius, she said, using the name he preferred. Will you tell me what's going on? Lucius turned inside, eyes cast downward. There's something I need to tell you, Lydia. Something that I should have told you years ago. Now Lydia felt her stomach tightening a knot. Whatever was coming wasn't good, and that much she could tell. Well, what is it, Lucius? She asked in barely a whisper. He turned to consider their palace. Years ago, I was told by 3 powerful witches that this day would come. The day when yours and the king's fates would become intertwined on your 18th birthday. Intertwined? Lydia asked, head spinning. What does that mean? He turned to consider her, his green eyes brimming with unkept emotion. Lydia, today you are to be claimed the king. Okay, well, that was it for that one. Now let's read something with more anger in it, because I'm really good with that. Ooh, let's read this one. When Bella discovers that she is at the center of war between demons and werewolves, she goes on a journey of self-discovery, falling in love with the man who may be her captive savior, the Werewolf King. But will Bella ever learn who she really is? This was how the world ended. The King of Wolves, the mystic monster, the majestic man I'd grown to love and lust for with my every breath, he'd lay there, bleeding out beside his throne, dying. Towering over him was a grinding demon, the Demon Lord. He pointed at me with a long black spindly finger. "You're mine now," he croaked, fire spitting from his mouth. "Annabelle, my princess of darkness." I fell to my knees and cried out in anguish. But as the tears trailed down my cheeks, I felt them bubbling, boiling, melting through my skin. I shrieked, tearing at my face, trying to make it stop. But there was no stopping what I was becoming now. I heard the Demon King's crackling laugh as my tears became black scars, my eyes voids, my lips that would never know the taste of his again. The Werewolf King I loved. He was lost. I was lost. The world was lost. Only darkness ruled now. I woke up with a start, shaking, hyperventilating, but the world was still dark. "What?" I said, freaking out. "What's happening?" I realized that I was wearing an eye mask, and as soon as I pulled it off, I could see that I was safe and sound in my chambers. Phew. That damn dream again. It had been reoccurring for weeks, but every time I woke up, I couldn't even remember single details. Only the terror, the dread, the feeling that something big was coming, but what? A heavy knock at the door made me jump. "Honey!" I turned to see my father. That was all. "Get a grip, Bella," I scolded myself. "What is it, Dad?" "There's something important we need to discuss." He came and sat down on my bed. My father was the alpha of our pack. Built like a brick wall, but with a quiet kindness in his brown eyes that couldn't be rivaled. He was fiercely devoted to his family, which is why what he said next shocked me to my core. "Annabelle," he said, eyes lowering, "I don't know how to say this, but it's time for you to leave the pack behind." My eyes widened. "What?" "Your mother and I, we're sending you somewhere safe, warm, far away from here." "What are you talking about?" I said, standing up, backing away. "This is my home. I can't leave the pack. I belong." "You belong where I say you belong," he bellowed, and I was struck quiet. My father rarely raised his voice. That meant that this was serious. It meant that he, the alpha of our pack, was scared of something. But what? Why are you doing this?" I asked, and now tears filled my eyes. I thought of my brother, Sean, and my best friends, Joshua and Danny, and most of all, Gregory, the man that I believed I was destined to be with. How was I ever going to live without them? What was happening? My world was slipping from beneath my feet. My father rarely raised his voice, and that meant that this was serious, and it meant that he, the alpha of our pack... Oh wait, I already read that. Jesus, man. Protection from what? What was this related to that damn dream? If only I could remember the details, but I wasn't scared of it. Whatever it was, no, this was my home, and nothing. Nobody was going to take that away from me. "Annabelle," my father said that seeing the wheels turning in my head. "Don't try to stop me," I said. And before he knew what was happening, I ran from the room, out of the house, and into the woods as fast as my feet could take me. I was running for my life, and in the distance I could hear my father booming his voice. "Come back here, Annabelle!" But no way was I stopping now. I shifted and felt the familiar warmth seep into my skin, my limbs stretching, a pelt of reddish fur emerging from my body, covering me like a thick blanket. Now on all fours, I sped toward my secret spot in the forest, and I discovered it when I was much younger. Sean, my big brother, had teased me relentlessly, leading me to flee into the forest in tears. "You're not my sister!" he shouted. "Go back where you came from!" He was 5 years, my senator, and all I'd ever wanted was to be loved by him. That night I stumbled exhausted into the clearing. but the full moon looked down on me, blinding me with its fluorescent majesty. It spoke to me suddenly, soothing my worries, and it was my secret friend when I was lost in the darkness. I was running there now, hoping to find the same solace and comfort I first felt those 13 years ago. Being sent away meant that I would have to leave behind my special clearing too. I couldn't hear the thought. Where could I turn? And where could I be alone? Oh dear moon goddess, don't let this be my fate. Don't let my father send me away. Bella, stop! Wait for me, hollered Sean. Time had done much to resolve our differences, making us close now, and I knew he cared. But something inside me refused to let my legs stop running, and I needed to be away from everyone. I heard him shift behind me, and his large 6-foot 10-inch frame morphing into a massive gray wolf that was just as quick as it was strong, and he would catch up with my small weak wolf at any moment. When I first shipped at 15, I thought that my wolf would get bigger, but it never did, and unlike the rest of my family, my wolf remained small and scrawny, which made me easier to catch. Sean's wolf jumped on my back, planting me to the dirt, and I tried to wriggle free, nipping at his legs, but it was no use, and Sean snarled and dug his nails into my pelt. Relentlessly under the pain, I morphed back to my human form, and he let me get up. One upside to being an undersized wolf. I was the only one in the pack who could keep my clothes on while shifting. And we need to talk, Sean said, putting on his shirt. I'm not going anywhere, I spat. If Dad sent you after me, you have to, Bella. It's the only way. I can't believe you're on his side, I shot back. For the moon goddess' sake, will you tell me what the hell is going on? Sean looked away, and I knew it must have been something serious. He wasn't one to avoid confrontation. In fact, he had quite the reputation in the pack for knocking out anyone who looked at him wrong, or any poor guy who looked at me for that matter. He's coming for you, Bella, Sean said quietly. He knows where you are. You can't be here when you turn 18. He? What are you talking about? Who's he? It's not for me to say. If Dad didn't think you should know, it's my life, Sean. It's my life, Sean, I shouted. I deserve to know if someone's after me. Please, just tell me who it is. Who's coming for me? Is it another alpha? No, he's not a werewolf. He's something else. Something else? What do you mean? There isn't anything else. Just humans and werewolves. There's a lot you don't know, Bella. I felt like the world I knew and loved was falling apart, and not even my secret clearing should protect me from what was coming next. Look, do you remember that day you ran away in the forest because I was taunting you and no one could find you all day and Mom went ballistic? And then you were grounded for like a week? I replied, yeah, of course. I hated you that day. Sure, I would have too, but Sean said impatiently, as if I was keeping him from making his point. But do you even remember what I was saying before you took off? You said that no one loved me, and Mom and Dad were lying to me. You were a real jerk back then, you know that? You made my life a living hell. I also said that you would found the pack border. Whatever. That's the same stupid joke every older brother makes. What does it matter? My body betrayed my true feelings, and I could feel my heart pounding fiercely in my ribcage. A revelation was coming, and I could feel it. Sean looked at me with heavy eyes and let out a deep sigh. That wasn't a joke, Bella. I silently pleaded for him to smirk or wink, anything to indicate that he was just pulling my leg. Instead, his face remained solemn. I remember one night Dad came back with a bundle in his arms, and he and Mom argued. I'd never heard him argue like that, so I just got closer and stared to eavesdrop. And Mom wanted to keep you, but Dad was worried. He kept saying that there must be more to the story, and he said that somebody was going to come back for you one day. I was downstairs to see what they were talking about, and that's when I first saw you bundled in that blanket. You were so small, and that's why I was in you for so long that I was scared to love you because I thought that you might be taken from us, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing my little sister. And it took me a while to realize that it didn't even matter if someone came because they weren't your family. We were your family. It was too much to process all at once, and I didn't know where to begin. I looked at my brother and my protector, my friend. This was tearing him apart from the inside. That's why you're so protective? I asked. I can't help it, he said, nodding. I promised that I'd never let anything bad happen to you, and that's why you have to come back home with me. Alright? First tell me, I demanded. Who is he and who's after me? Sean sighed, looking down. I knew the answers were immediate, though, and I suspected that they weren't going to make anything clearer. Last week, an ultimatum was issued to the king, and it said to hand you over to else war would be declared on all werewolves. The king? A war? I stammered. What could that possibly have to do with me? Bella, Sean said, holding me firmly, we don't know much, but we know he's a ruler of his own kind, and we know he's called the Demon Lord. A flash of horrifying imaginary struck me silent. A black spiny finger pointed right at me. A fiery, cackling mouth. The dream, that was who I dreamt of. The Demon Lord. I wish I knew more, Sean said. All we know is that he's incredibly dangerous, and he's willing to go to the war if it means getting you back. I choked for my breath, my hands clammy. I felt like I was suffocating. Why? Why me? What could he want with me? Bella, Sean said, looking into my eyes, I think that's where you came from. You belong to him. I took a shaky step back, eyes widening, hyperventilating. Everything started to blur, and it felt like my body was weightless and I was falling. And now I could hear his voice again, the voice from my dream. Annabelle, my princess of darkness. Sean's voice was screaming. He was trying to reach me, but he was too far. It was too late. My secret clearing, illuminated by the moon, was drowning in darkness, and the stars blinking out, one by one. As all went black, as the world ended around me, all I could see was the other man from my dream, the werewolf king, lying in a pool of his own blood. Bella! I watched his lips silently mouth. I love you. And then there was nothing but darkness. Oh man, I was getting good. Ow, that sucks. Okay, I'm really getting into this whole thing. Let's see. This will probably be the last one I'll do. Sienna is a 19-year-old werewolf with a secret. She's a virgin. The only virgin in the pack, and she's dead set on making it through this year's haze without giving into her primal urges. But when she meets out Aiden, the alpha, she forgets all about her self-control. All I could see was sex. Everywhere I turned, there was bodies shuddering, limbs shifting, mouths moaning. I ran through a forest panting, trying to escape the carnal phantoms around me, which seemed to be summoning me. But the deeper into the woods I ran, the darker and the more alive the forest became. Some trees swayed like lovers, others with gnarled roots, and spiny branches looked like predators closing in on me. Something out there in the dark was chasing me, something inhuman. And now the mouths weren't moaning, they were screaming. Compulsory orgies everywhere, turning violent, bloody, life-threatening. Any second now, the darkness was going to catch me. The sex was going to strangle me. As I felt a root snake its way around my leg, I tripped, and I fell down a gaping hole in the center of the forest. But it wasn't a hole. It was a mouth, with sharp teeth and a black tongue, licking its lip about to swallow me whole. I tried to scream, but I had no voice. I fell, farther, deeper, until I was one with the violent sexual madness, completely consumed. I blinked. What the hell was I drawing? Sitting by the riverbank, sketchbook in hand, I looked down, disbelieving at my own work. I had drawn a most disturbing and sexual vision. that could mean only one thing: the haze was coming. But before I gave the haze or my drawing another thought, the sound of nearby giggling distracted me, and I turned to see a group of girls surrounding him. Aiden Norwood. I'd never seen him here before, not the riverbank where I go to draw and clear my mind. You don't find a lot of our kind hanging out around here. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's the calm when we're always expected to be wild. Maybe it's the water when every one of us burns with a fire within. Or maybe it's just a spot I've only ever thought of as my own. A secret place where I am not one of the pack. Where I am just me, Sienna Mercier, a 19-year-old red-headed self-taught artist. A seemingly normal girl. The alpha walked toward the water, ignoring the gaggle of girls following him. He looked like he wanted to be left alone, and it made me curious. It made me want to draw him. Sure, I knew it was a risk to draw the alpha, but how could I resist? I began to outline him, towering at 6'5" with disheveled jet black hair and golden green eyes that seemed to change color every time he turned his head. Aiden was the definition of mouth-watering. I was just beginning to work on those eyes when he turned his head and sniffed. I froze mid-pen stroke. If he were to see me now, if he were to see what I was drawing. But then, to my relief, he looked back out at the water, becoming lost again in some dark reverie, even surrounded by others. The alpha looked alone, so I drew him alone. I'd always watched him from afar, and I'd never been this close, but now I could see how his biceps bulged from his shirt, how his spine curved to accommodate his transformation, how quickly he could shift. I imagined bent-over eyes, searching like a feral animal, and he seemed in this instance already halfway. A man, yes, but even more so, a werewolf. His beauty reminded me that the haze was fast approaching, and it was a time of the year when every werewolf from the age of 16 and older goes mad with lust, and the season where everyone and I mean everyone fucks like crazy. Once or twice a year, this unpredictable hunger, this physical need would infect all of us, and those who didn't have maters found a temporary partner, didn't have mates, who found a temporary partner instead and fooled around to their heart's content. In other words, there was no one in the pack older than 16 who was a virgin. Looking at Aiden now, I wondered if the rumors swirling around him were true. If that was one of the reasons he was here, ignoring the girls floating in my riverbank. Some said it'd been months since Aiden had taken any woman to bed, that he was distancing himself from everyone. Why? A secret mate? No, the pack office would have sniffed her out by now. Then what was it? What was it to come of our beloved Alpha if he had no partner when the haze struck? It's none of your business, I chided myself. What did it matter to me who Aiden screwed? He was 10 years older, and like most werewolves, only interested in somewhat of his own age. To Aiden Norwood, the alpha of the second largest pack in the United States, I didn't exist. Putting aside my schoolgirl crush, I knew that I was better off that way. Michael, my best friend, was dead set on finding me a fuck buddy. She'd already paired up in advance, as was the common among unmated wolves before the trying to set me up with 3 of her brother's friends, all who seemed perfectly decent and who'd been blunt that they threw me for a good time in the sack. Michael couldn't understand why I turned each of them down. Ugh, I could almost hear Michael's voice reverberating in my head. Why are you always so damn picky, girl? Because the truth was I had a secret. At the age of 19, I was the only virgin she-wolf in our whole pack. I'd been through 3 seasons, and no matter how sex-crazed I became, I had never given into my carnal desires. I know very unwolfy of me to care about feelings and first times, but I cherished mine. It wasn't that I was prude in our society. There was no such thing, but unlike most girls, I refused to settle until I found my mate. I was going to find him, and I was saving my virginity for him, whoever he might be. I continued to sketch the alpha when I looked up and saw, to my surprise and suddenly, that he wasn't there. Not bad, I heard a little voice beside me, but the eyes could use a little work. I turned to see, standing right next to me, looking down at my sketch, Aiden fucking Norwood. Before I could catch my breath, He looked up and our eyes met, and I tensed, realizing that I wasn't making direct eye contact, and immediately looked away. No one in their right mind dared to look at the Alpha in the eyes. It could only mean that only one of the two things: you were challenging the Alpha's dominance, aka a death wish, or you were inviting the Alpha to sex. Since I didn't intend to do either, my only option was to look away before it was too late, and pray that he didn't misinterpret the meaning of my glance. "Forgive me," I said quietly, just to be on the safe side. "You took me by surprise." Okay, guys, so I'm going to start talking in a New York accent since he is the Alpha, so I'm going to sound like really tough. "I apologize," he said. "I didn't mean to startle you." That voice, even saying the most polite words imaginable, they sounded loaded with menace like any other second. He might rip your throat out with his bare human form teeth. "It's okay," he said. "Really, I don't bite most of the time." I was so close I could reach out and touch his rippling muscles and golden skin. I lifted my eyes and chased a look. Arturo Jack's face that shouldn't be handsome but was, thick eyebrows that looked coarse to the touch, like a hint of his werewolf form. And a nose, even though slightly crooked, no doubt broken in some past scuffle that couldn't interfere with his so sexy it hurts to look. Arturo Jack's face that The Alpha took a step closer as if to test me. I could feel every hair on my body rise in trepidation, or was it temptation? "Next time you draw me," Aiden said, "come closer." "Oh, okay," I sputtered like an idiot. And then just as quickly as he had appeared, Aiden Norwood turned and took off, leaving me by the river alone. I sighed, feeling every muscle in my body ease. It wasn't an everyday event to see the Alpha out of the pack house, the headquarters for all the pack business. Mostly we saw the Alpha at gatherings or balls, always something formal. What had happened here today was rare. I could already see from the jealous looks of Aiden's adoring fans who had followed him here only to be ignored that this could quickly spiral out of control. Even a whiff of interaction with a female, especially a young comer like myself, would be enough to send the horniest bitches into a frenzy, tearing down the pack house walls just for a taste of him. An event of that magnitude was sure to stress the Alpha out, and a stressed Alpha meant that a dysfunctional Alpha, which meant a dysfunctional pack. You get the picture. No one wanted that. I decided with the little light that was left of the day, I would finish drawing to clear my mind, just me and the river and the peace. But all I could see were Aiden Norwood's eyes, and how very wrong I had drawn them. The Alpha was right. I could do better. If I could just get closer. But when would I ever be this close again? I didn't know then what I knew now. That within a few hours the haze was about to begin. The Eye was about to become a sex-crazed beast, and that Aiden Norwood, the Alpha of the East Coast Pack, was going to play a very prominent role in my sexual awakening. It was enough to make a girl howl. Well, that was very sexual. Okay. Wasn't expecting that. Alright, guys, so that's it I'm gonna read for now. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. So I'm gonna keep looking up some more. I really do like the wolf ones. They're pretty interesting. Alright, so that's about it. I read plenty, so